Hi, my name is Stephen Sims. I work for Indiana University. My title is Manager of HPFS, or the High Performance File System Group. I guess, everybody listed here works for IU. Jeremy Filizetti's working part-time for IU, as is Kit Westneat. Jeremy couldn't make it. I wish that he were here, in part to talk to Sebastian, and in part, so that you guys don't nail me to the wall, because I'm a manager. But I'll do my best with the security portion of the program. IU has a contract with OpenSFS to produce some code. The first piece was about creating code for UID mapping. So this would provide you metadata consistency across administrative domains. And we're calling it Nodemap, because that I guess that's in some way the variable that we settled on after, long diatribe and debate. We've been using UID mapping both locally and across WAN, basically permitting people to have workflows that they wouldn't otherwise be able to achieve, at least easily. Some people do actually compute in place across the WAN. I want to be clear that this isn't strictly a WAN code, right? It's often associated with that. But in IU's case, we have departments with Unix servers. They're maintained by, as Rick was talking about before, graduate students. And they have their own UID set. And they're across, the LAN. And we'd like them to have access to a central file system attached to our HPC resources without having to go through madness. Basically, it goes from the instrument to the server in their office, which transparently appears on the supercomputing resource. Nodemap, at least in a preview way, has landed in 2.7. So what does preview mean? It means you can do it, and we'd love you to test it, but the niceties aren't present yet. We're working hard to make that happen. But so what's not there? Well, you got to run Nodemap commands on both the MDS and OSS presently. So we're working on a tool to appropriately push that data out. In addition, we've had to write scripts in order to load the map because it doesn't persist between module loads. And that's all going to be fixed in 2.8. Currently, you can only list the maps through proc. That's going to change also in the next version. So if you're curious about this, we'd love for you to test it. Now, what I'm going to try to do is walk you through what that might look like. As I mentioned before, say you've got existing computing resources attached to your Lustre file system, and you want to integrate a new resource that may not share the same UID space. Either you're taking on a system that's not part of your centralized authentication mechanism, or you're adding, like I said before, maybe some machine from a laboratory. So, Nodemap elements. So here are the pieces parts. In ID, which you guys are all familiar with, you have what we're calling a policy group, which I guess you might describe perhaps as a collection of nodes, for lack of a better word. There are two properties that you can grant to these nodes. You can say this is a trusted node, which more or less means unmapped, and an admin node, which means that you're turning off root squash. So you have what we're calling an ID map or ID maps, and that really is the translation table. So before you activate the Nodemap feature, you need to create a policy group first for your Lustre servers. And so how do we go about doing that? Well, L-control Nodemap add Lustre servers, or Bob Davis, or whatever. And then you can add the range in NIDS for those servers. And we'd like to turn admin on, so that way your servers avoid root squash. And these would be trusted systems, so you want to turn that on as well, so that their local UIDs correspond to, I guess, your local sites or the file system's UIDs. So, in our case, say you've got some clients at a genome center across campus, or maybe 80 kilometers away in Indianapolis. And so on the local system, which in our case is called Karst, you have 3 different accounts, same username, with 3 separate UIDs. On their own local system, they have 3 accounts with separate UIDs. So we have 192.168.0.30. So this policy group, okay, and just to riff on this for a moment. So here we have Genome Chi. And Genome Chi in this case is one NID. But it is possible to use ranges. Say Genome Chi were a cluster. You could specify a range to encompass all of those nodes. And you could set an appropriate mapping, provided, you know, like in the case of a cluster, your UID on all the nodes would be the same. That gets you out of the headache of having to have table after table after table after table. So how do we go about doing that? First, we create a policy group. Then we add the NID to the policy group. And then we populate this policy group with an ID map. Pretty simple. Command the name of the node or cluster of nodes that you're going to operate on. The fact that you're doing UID as opposed to GID. And then your local versus remote UID, separated by colon. Is this clear so far? Am I, right on? So you want to check your work. At least in 2.7, you want to cat proc fs Lustre Nodemap genome chi ID map. So each collection of nodes is going to have its own directory. In that directory, you have the map file. That's what your output's going to look like. And likewise, if you want to see the range or ranges that are associated with genome chi, you just check out the ranges file. This is one that we see commonly. Tommy Minyard, are you out there? No? Yes? So I have an account on Tommy Systems. My user ID is something like, UX598326. And, I mean, that comes from a long time ago in Packy. And so I remember having a tough time, as you can tell, remembering what that username was. But it had a separate UID. And we did, during TerraGrid, have a file system that was mounted on some resources at TAC. And so we were doing some computation on Lone Star, which was being written to the file system at IU. So I had my username at IU, SSIMS, and my username at TAC, UX stuff. And so what I really wanted to do was be able to operate on the file system from both of those locations. Now in the example here, let's say one of these is at Pittsburgh and one of these is at NCSA, because we had, I guess, a guy named Scott Michael was running code on Cobalt at NCSA, and he was running stuff on Popal at Pittsburgh, and he had a separate IU UID. And so I guess that, that instance fits this case best. And here's how we would do it. We would add a second policy group. We would add a NID for that. And we would add an ID map. And these maps, as we saw before, they're just completely independent of one another. Actually, do you have any questions about the ID map portion? I mean, is this something that you think you could, try in your own home? Yes, no, maybe? Bueller? All right. In addition, the other piece of our contract with OpenSFS involved creating a shared key security solution based on GSS. Most people associate GSS with Kerberos, and rightfully so. I mean, in many ways, that's, hand in glove. However, I guess I like to think of GSS as a kind of vacuum cleaner. I'm not saying that it sucks. I just want to be clear. Kerberos is one attachment for that vacuum cleaner, and we wanted the shared key flavor to be another attachment to attach to that same vacuum cleaner. So we saw this as an alternative to Kerberos. I guess we felt that file system admins shouldn't have to run their own KDC. We had problems while we were playing with Kerberos, dealing with the political ramifications. IU is a Kerberos shop, but going to the security office and saying, hi, we've got this service, and we'd really like to add it to IU's central KDC server, you get some pushback, like, what does this do? And why should we do this? And, this is only a very small part of the business that we do. You research people are crazy. You don't know anything about security. In addition, we had same pushback and have seen other sites. I mean, it's not just IU. People saying, well, we're not willing to cross-realm with those other guys. Mike Shuey, are you out there? Hi, Mike. Mike he works at Purdue, our rival up the road. So I think it would be kind of funny to go to the administration and say, well, we want to cross-realm with Purdue. Well, I was going to say, that's what I love about you. I mean, we'd make it work somehow. But, again, the security office is not going to be crazy about that. So that's why we pursued this. So, as Sebastian pointed out, there's the I for integrity, and there's P for privacy. And so we wanted to create a context, the SK context for shared key, and we were going to create two flavors. One SKI, well, I guess one is SKI, shared key, and using HMAC, we're going to ensure message integrity. Then using this second flavor, SKPI, we would have two keys. We would do the integrity and have the key for the HMAC integrity, and we would use Diffie-Hellman to create a session key which would provide forward secrecy. Jeremy used the word perfect. I'm a little cautious. I mean, you know, striving for perfection. So, focusing on the GSS portion of the program, at least, you know, what we're trying to do is initialize context through user space calls. So, as Sebastian showed, you know, you have your LGSS keyring, and, you know, you have to have request D, and this is the format that we would use. I'm into totally uncharted territory for a manager, by the way. I mean, you know. So please don't roast me if this is completely wrong. So on the server side, you know, we're using this LSVC GSSD. It's going to read and write to a proc file. It needs to be running, otherwise the security context initialization is going to get missed. So more or less how things would happen is we would receive requests, unpack those, and then the upcall on the server side would provide, I guess, the initialization and negotiation. And again, this is from Jeremy, so I'm going to do my best here. He has completed work on the LGSS keyring code for the shared key. He's done a lot of work on the LSVG SSD code. He's not quite complete yet. He told me just, oh, I don't know, a couple hours ago that he's got something and he's prepared to test. And then the loading keys piece, he's got some stuff going on. He really wanted to have something that we could show here, but you know, life gets in the way, and his other job, of course. So using your mount command, this would basically add your key or keys to the kernel's keyring. So I guess before leaving, I guess I want to pass some congratulations. You know, it may seem like I was giving Peter Bojanic a hard time earlier. I just want to be clear on where things are at there. I want to congratulate them. I think that this whole you know, secure data appliance is a good thing. I think that it's really making people in the Lustre community focus on making things secure, something that obviously, you know, wasn't in the tip of everyone's forebrain at the time. But I guess I want to say, you know, if this isn't going to be upstream soon or deployed soon, you know, I think that we need some open security. I mean, there are two different opinions really on security code. One is that you should keep it closed, and the other is that you should keep it open. You know, Diffie of Diffie-Hellman said, you want to keep it open because, you know, more eyes the better. There are others that say that that's not the case. So, you know, it's debatable. But I think that it would be useful for the community to have some sort of open security model. So I guess one of the things that I'd like to see happen, and I think that I'd like to talk about this on Thursday at the Developers Day, is what people's requirements are. You know, what is it that you would want from a security model? I know that DoD folks have very specific constraints. I mean, I think that the shared key work that IU is undertaking, it really scratches an itch that we and many of our partners would like to see scratched. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents worth. if that's something that's of interest to you, let me know. And if you're attending the Developer Day on Thursday, you know, scratch your head and see what you think. Yeah. Rick.
So this has me excited. I think this is exactly something that was needed based on our original vision of Data Oasis as a campus resource that never materialized, despite the fact that we invested heavily in our Ethernet-based fabric to do this. And the reason why was the lack of security controls. Obviously, you're facing the same problem. So, and with Comet coming, you know, our original discussion is we wouldn't be able to mount Lustre on the virtual clusters because of security concerns. And so I will definitely talk to you about this more on the weekend. I will be there on Thursday. The specific question in terms of the technology, with the ID mapping, when you say for this NID or NIDs, there are these people or these UIDs that map to these UIDs, does that also restrict the UIDs and GIDs that can access the system?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, which I thought that would be the case, but I wanted to be clear.
No, if you're not on the map file, if you don't have an ID map, then you can't really do anything.
Perfect. Thank you.
I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but is there any automation and management of the Lustre side UIDs?
That's coming in 2.8.
Okay.
What's your name and where are you from?
Annie Loftus from NCSA.
Anybody else? Thank you all for your time.